calling the kettle black a little bit.
Good evening, everybody. We have a special guest today. This is somebody that's been all his life at Carolina Bible Camp, just about. Mr. Caleb Sams. I've known this young guy. I've tortured this young guy until he was bigger than me. Then I don't do that anymore. But he's somebody that I love dearly and think of him as a son. And he's just been a joy to be around over the years. And it's a true honor to spend a few minutes with you to talk to you about your history with Carolina Bible Camp. And with the 49 days of CBC, what we're trying to do is just share people's experience with Carolina Bible Camp, what it means to them, share your, it's part of your heart. I know that's most of us. It's something that we love to do, love to be involved in. And I know that someday you want to be back there working, bring your own kids there one day, right?
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Caleb Sams, sitting here thinking about Carolina Bible Camp, and when you heard that we had to close the 7 weeks of camp, how did that hit you, man?
So, I mean, for me, I kind of had the same initial response that, like Ryan and Ian had earlier. It's been a few years since I've been able to be actively involved. The last few years I've been able to come down and visit every once in a while, but just been so busy with different things. And so part of my response to that news is kind of living tangentially through you guys and knowing what that did to Dad and what that did to you and what that's done to Janet and Dennis and all these other people that are now such a huge core part of their life, and their summer is gone for a short period of time, and knowing kind of the empathetic side of me kind of feeling that. But the other side of that coin is I'm pretty sure this is going to be the year I was going to be able to come back.
Oh, yeah?
And was incredibly excited about that personally. I didn't know what that looked like, fully. And I hadn't really talked to Dad much about first week. I hadn't talked to you about seventh week. Didn't know what third or sixth week looked like. But I thought this was the year that things were they lined up a little bit more for me to be able to spend a week back at camp. And so I had the same feeling with Horizons. This is another camp we do here in Tennessee, which this is the first week I was going to be able to be back there the first year. And so crushed. And that's selfish. And then just knowing what camp meant for me and knowing what that tenfold means for all the, everybody that's not able to do it this year. Yeah. It's miserable.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. Especially when you just see all the memories and everything that's been going online right now. It's great seeing them, but also it just kind of hits you hard in the heart. Well, when you think about Carolina Bible Camp, you've been raised there. When did you first come to camp?
My first memories are as a pre-camper during the first week with Donna Woodhouse running around the what used to be a swamp behind the amphitheater and catching leeches. And toads and all sorts of stuff, and swimming in the pool, and going out by the lake with her, and all the that core group of kids that just grew up there, whose parents were all super involved with camp. And so it was a really interesting group. Technically, I just mentioned I was on campus while my mom was pregnant with me, and in every summer since. For the first few years, in recent history, Mom hasn't been able to, make camp work in her schedule and everything like that. But for the longest time, she would still be at camp and teach and all that kind of stuff. And so I was technically a pre-camper from the moment I was born. And every year since, up until probably about 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah. When you think back to those times, the people that impacted you then, when you were even tiny like that, you can still remember those folks, can't you?
Yeah, it's, so we talk about it a lot here because one of the things I'm trying to do is entice Courtney into spending a week with us at camp. And her experience at camp is, the more traditional, larger youth group in, kind of Alabama, more part of the traditional Bible Belt, where they had enough kids in their youth group to kind of go do their own camp.
Yeah.
which is something we've encountered a lot more here in Tennessee and in Alabama, and for the North and South Carolina, and then even portions of Tennessee and Georgia and Virginia and everywhere that comes to camp. For so many of us, other than a few congregations, that was our youth group.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was our youth ministers. That was because we didn't go to congregations that had that kind of ability or resources. So for us to have a youth group that was more than 6 people, it was camp.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, some of the most influential people in my life were people that I went to camp with and grew up with, as well as, I mean, I couldn't even begin to start listing off names.
Well,
just for me being blessed with
at least give us a couple of names towards the end of this, but right now, you've grown up there at Carolina Bible Camp, and I've had the joy of being there with you for a number of years and stuff like that. Some of the activities that went on there. Is anything that in your mind that stands out? Not the crazy, well, whatever.
I'm trying to, yes. I mean, I think just, and it's so cool. And I know your experience with all the, the different weeks you've been able to be a part of, and how they're all so different in the way that they kind of create themselves and what they do. And being able to, oh man, I think a first week and the excitement that is created from growing up, going to that week of camp and going up and being a pre-camper, and then you're so excited because next year you're going to be a camper, and then you do that for a few years, and then you're so excited because next year you're going to be a kitchen worker, and you do that for a few years, and the next year you're so excited because you're finally going to be a counselor. And I did that for, I can't remember how many times I was a counselor, 4 or 5 times. And I remember the last summer I was a counselor, I came to Dad and I said, I don't have the energy. Like, I'm old. All these other kids are in high school. I don't have the ability to run around campus. And then transitioned into, I think we did it 1 year before both of our lives kind of took us away. And when Ian and I were head counselors together.
Yep.
And then I think I did it 1 more year with Eric.
Yeah.
And then that was when, I wasn't able to come back for a little bit. But, and then I think of, I was able, one summer I went to first, second, and third week all in a row and lifeguarded the whole time and was a kitchen worker the whole time. And that, what would have been 4th week that year was the year the Horizons hit. So for a month straight, I was at camp. I think of the staff camper challenges.
Oh yeah. Week 3.
The level of competition and camaraderie we were able to create there. We had throughout the entire time I was at camp, my entire life, there was some really special, cool things that would go. You think of just the massive staff camper softball games.
Oh yeah.
And all the different events that would go on. Week 6 always did a really good job when I was younger of doing the really big staff camper basketball games. But we had a really special window for a couple years at week 3 with C12.
Oh yeah.
And I hear that and I feel like somewhere in the distance there's 14 other guys just yelling it out. And what we were able to do for just a couple years there with the different challenges every day. And then I have to give a shout out. I don't want to just ramble the whole time we're talking, but I do have to give a shout out to the one time Zach and I challenged Fish in DC to jousting.
Oh yeah. I've got video of that.
And we were able, I don't know how we did it, but I talked Wilson Burton into letting me go off campus with Christopher Davis. And we went to Lowe's and we picked up 16-foot PVC pipes and shoved water noodles on them and then put trash cans on their carts and we hopped in them and and leave it to Joseph De Christina to actually know how to score a jousting match.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was quite an experience there. What about the trash can game? Do you remember that?
Yeah. I don't know if I feel like you brought that to camp. I think by the time I was already pretty much either a counselor, so I don't have vivid memories of getting in a trash can. I have vivid memories of fearing for the life of everyone else that was.
You watch that video and you see those kids going by each other, you're like, oh.
Well, and yeah. You see the actual game and how dangerously how the potential for chaos is there, but then you see guys like Josh or Aaron just tackle somebody completely unsuspecting.
Then they take off chasing each other throughout campus, and you're like, oh, they're gone.
Oh man.
Well, when you sit here and you think about, all the memories and everything of Carolina Bible Camp, is there a favorite memory that stands out to you? There's probably more than one, but
I think this one, because it's created, and this wasn't the moment that created anything, but there was a 1 year at first week, Ian and I were able to kind of co-team the Thursday and Friday night devos.
Yeah, I remember that.
At the amphitheater. And Ian and mine's relationship is, we don't have enough time. The way it started, the first time Ryan brought Ian to camp, I'd made it up in my mind that the last semester of school that year, that when we got to camp, I was gonna talk to Ryan Leffler, and I was thought she was a cool girl. And then all of a sudden we get there and there's this guy who's never been to camp before. We don't know who he is. And so I spent the entire week torturing him. And I think if we hadn't been at camp, he'd have probably hit me in the head with a chair or something. And you fast forward a few years and I get the phone call that he's going to propose. And then a few months later, I'm there standing by him as they get married. And what's crazy is, other than his dad, I'm pretty sure every other groomsman at that wedding was camp ties.
Oh, wow.
And I was waiting when y'all interviewed him for him to think of that. And Ryan's was very similar, but that's because half her family's camp.
Yeah.
And she's got 42 sisters. So, and so being able to have that, knowing that that's where our relationship started, and how it could have just never gone anywhere.
Right.
And because of me being a knuckleheaded 14, 15-year-old,
competition,
what's turned into, none of that's changed, but could have ruined what's turned into one of the greatest friendships of my life. And we don't get to spend that much time with each other, and we don't get to talk that often, but when we do, it's this instant, nothing's changed, nothing's, and being able to have those 2 nights with him where we were able to just really dig deeper into each other, really try and pull out what we thought God was having us, wanting us to present to those kids that night, and really just bounce back and forth off each other and use each other to create what alone wouldn't have been nearly as, impactful, at least for us.
Yeah. That's something that's unique. You don't see it very often, where you see 2 young men get up and be able to bring together a lesson like y'all did those 2 nights in a row. And that was a true blessing to see that. When you think about, all right, you as a younger teen, knucklehead, aggravating the mess out of me, but then to see you up there and sharing God's word in a powerful way, that's those are some sweet times, man. Sweet times. Are there any other memories you can think of that you'd want to share with us?
Well, I mean, like, if we're going to talk about C12 and the staff challenge, like the first time we finally won the basketball game was a monumental, special moment. Just something, it felt like this Mount Everest that we had to get across, and finally, after years of trying to do this thing day after day after day, finally getting across that hump. It's something that, I put a post up this week just joking about just camp basketball. It wasn't even, I think it might have been, an iteration of the staff camper game when I was on staff. And one of the guys that I played with in that first week, but it was the original 5 that kind of created it, still to this day has the t-shirts that we created to wear as a team. Oh, yeah. And posted a picture of it on my post on Facebook, and
right.
Nini. And I think I've still got mine somewhere in storage. I was looking, because he posted it before we got on the call tonight, I was looking for it to see if I could find it.
You should have had it on to that.
Fit into it and have it.
Oh man. Well, over the years, I know you've met a lot of young campers, and you've been, you've left a good impression on these kids. Um, is there a camper that stands out to you that's impacted you? If you think back over the years.
There's so many.
Yeah.
Just the ability to be a counselor in those cabins and spend an entire week with these kids. But I've always had, and I think a lot of us did, but such close ties to watching Dallas grow up.
Yes. Yes.
From the times I was able to be his counselor to his team leader to, I can't think of a week of camp at first week where he didn't assign himself to the table I was sitting at. And we would get in trouble with Lisa and Peaches because we'd have eating competitions in the middle of, we'd try and see how many corn nuggets we could eat. And they get mad at us because we'd eat 42 bowls of them trying to just outdo each other. And he was always, still is, such a spirited, kid at the time. And now, a young man, is married. Yeah. And I was the guy that baptized him.
Yeah.
I can't remember if it was first week or third week or what. But just that full culmination of, if I could think of the kinds of the junk I put staff members through when I was growing up, Dallas probably did it 10 times.
Well, I remember when he was the first time he was a camper, and he walked around and he had his chest out. It's like he's ready to fight everybody, but just the sweetest kid, but he's looking.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, what a mess! What a mess! But you could probably think of tens of kids, that have impacted you over the years and stuff like that. Well, one of the questions that I've been asking everybody, and your dad is one of the guys that I think of whenever I ask this question. Is there a staff member that you can think of that's really left an impression on you over the years that really stands out in your mind? There's probably more than just one. I mean, you're welcome to say however many.
I can't think of that question without instantly thinking of Wilson. Mm-hmm. Wilson, for our family specifically, was basically our grandfather growing up. Yeah. My family, I've got a great family, but they're relatively spread out. And so we didn't really have any immediate family members that lived in the Carolinas. And, with Dad being in he just celebrated 30 years at Kannapolis last year. And so with, growing up in the same congregation and being able to be around that family, just to have a special relationship with him. But man, there is no C12 without DC and Fish. And the year that they put Josh and I in that cabin, they did a really big disservice to those other young men. Yeah. Because of what those two guys were able to pull out of us and encourage us and take us to that level. It doesn't happen without them. I think of Dennis and you and man, and I've got special little relationships with people that just as life moves on, they're not able to be as involved with camp or they've gone on to do different things. And I think of guys like Justin Bronson and Matt Hudson and just the ways that they were spiritual mentors to me when I was younger. And the, just the different, I just feel like I can list name after name. It's impossible to not think of my first couple years at camp and not think of the team that Dad had assembled around him as this power team. And I don't mean to say this to discredit or disservice anybody that's working with him now, but when I think of Brett and Tim and Denise and Bonnie, I don't think first week is what it is right now. Yeah. Without those four people pouring into those kids and that system and that week to set it up for what it is now and what it was for my life and for what it's going to be, moving on. And I've just got such love and admiration for everybody. And even, you know, to watch somebody like Janet, whose role at camp has usually just been to manage the craft station, and the way that she's able to use that medium to just love on so many kids and to make them feel appreciated and cared for. And it's just, I don't know if you can pull somebody out that's been at camp, that if they've been to camp more than twice. I think that's the cutoff. If you come once and you don't come back, okay. If you come back one more time, it's because you've got something to give to those kids. That's not why you came back. You came back because you had something to give to those kids. You got so much more in return than you could ever put into words that you thought you were going to give. But you do that because, and those relationships form because the staff that keeps coming back are the ones that for 1 week and throughout the rest of the year, but for that 1 week, they dial in a way and they become a cohesive team and unit that is just powerful and just this picture of heaven on earth.
Well, when you see these guys come in on, well, like your dad and Brett and all those would come in Wednesday, Thursday, the week leading up to week 1, and all the time and effort. At first I was thinking, wow, this is crazy. But in order for that week to go off like it does, it takes that dedication by those people. And the example that your dad's given me over the years has just been amazing. And that's, you're going to leave physically empty, but you're going to be spiritually full.
Yeah. Just.
Well, if there's one thing that you could say to encourage and to, just kind of sum up Carolina Bible Camp, what would that be that you would say to Carolina Bible Camp?
It's home. I don't know if there's another place on the planet that when I pull through the gates, I have to turn the radio down and roll the windows down and listen to the tires crunch the gravel as you pull in. And this, I've been blessed throughout my entire life to have really, really good relationships and friendships with people a lot of the different places I've been. There's nothing like the people you meet at CBC. And being blessed to be able to be a part of almost every week of camp at some point, growing up, whether that's just, if I wasn't a camper, visiting 3 or 4 nights during the summer, because you just had to be at camp, and just being able to be, one of the director's kids, which put me, I felt like I was able to just interact with the other directors of the different weeks and do things, and being a sought after lifeguard because those became scarce for a while. And just, it's home. I miss it. I long for it. It's the number one representation of where you've got 150 to 200 different people that when they go home, they're going to whatever, all sorts of different churches that make up the body of Christ, whether they're liberal or conservative or Republican or Democrat or white or black or male or female. Like when they leave camp, wherever they go back to, and they go to those places and they get back into the routine of things, but for that 1 week or that 7 weeks in a summer, where they're able to get to this one place and just find such a gospel, biblical definition of unity during that 1 week. It's what makes me long for heaven, because I can feel so much of it. Like when I think about heaven, I think about camp, and I think that that's what it's going to be like. And it might be a little different here or there and have some different pieces to it or not, but that's the closest thing I've got to a representation, and I'll cherish it forever.
I don't think there's much more I could say to that. Well, Caleb, I've enjoyed these few minutes spending time with you, and I appreciate you, brother, and I can't wait to see you back at Carolina Bible Camp, and I can't wait to see what God's going to use you for. We're His vessel. We just got to let Him, Him guide us. So for the 49 days of CBC, it's been a great honor to get to know people a little bit more, hear their heart and their love for Carolina Bible Camp. And I just want to say thank you for spending a few minutes with us today to talk about a place that's truly dear to your heart.
Well, Andy, thank you. I know that you're enjoying this, and you're enjoying the ability to get to interact with everybody. But thank you for what you're doing for camp. Thank you for what you're doing for our memory's sake, and to be able to kind of capture this. There's going to be a time where we look back and this is a special summer.
Yes, sir.
And I'm thankful for people like you, and there's been people before you and there'll be people after you that care about camp the way that you do, and the way that you've used camp to do a lot of really, I mean, just think of like the story that I walked through and the ride that you put together, and it only made sense for that to end at camp.
I can't say. Love you, buddy.
Love you too, man.
Thank you.